Giovanni. We meet again as the group of Italians. I am Giovanni, with me are Marco, Sarah and Igor, an addition to the group. The theme remains the same, broadly speaking, the inner being, the psychic being, the soul and organizations. It can be a joint stock company, a corporation, the family, a community, us, being in Auroville, maybe have Auroville in mind as an organization, but it's not just that. We've already had one meeting, this is the second one, and I offer some points for reflection for discussion, but it's a free discussion. I'll put, as soon as I finish giving you this cue, the microphone in the center, and whoever feels like sharing something can take the mic or I'll pass it over. Freedom and responsibility, although I see here, this is the cue given by Sarah, I see freedom as responsibility. I don't know if it's an and. I imagine it's is as in being. So the dichotomy or the relationship between freedom and responsibility.
Marco, well, I want to begin by sharing about this experience I had immediately after we became Aurovillians. So 30 years ago, we had what was once called a contact person, now called mentor. Anyway, whatever it's called, it's the one who helped you enter into the community, to share your difficulties, your experiences, etc. And this was Mana, whom you all know. So, Mana had this stroke of genius to involve me immediately in a working group. To expand, we all know Auroville's point of view, that is, you must totally dedicate your spirit, your life, your work to what is the community. But already then, they were thinking about finding ways to involve more those, who anyway come in contact with the community, and what can be done to involve them, because often, their wives or husbands were not part of the community, but then in the end, they are part of the community. Those who come to do business here, are not. But anyway, they work with Aurovillians, that is. There's a lot of input that comes and changes. They don't respect this total involvement in our work. And, it was very interesting, because, sure it took almost a year of work, because we created a whole series of circles, that slowly expanded according to various things, finding a frame, that would work well, and then when all this was done we tried to present it to the community. To involve the community, also because then, unlike now, the relationship with the community, meetings, etc., was done by consensus. That is, if an important decision was reached, it had to be completely in consensus of the whole community. If even one person was against, for whatever reason, they were asked, if they could let it go or not. And this was also part of the evolutionary process, because when we all agree, a step is taken much more consciously, and makes sense for everyone. So we started doing a round of meetings with other people, involving many people, and at some point we clashed with a group, which now makes you laugh. But they were called the Frenchies, who are this group, let's say of French people. They have their newspaper in French, they have practically a community, within the community, or had, now it's different, let's say, they were fundamentalists back then. I don't know, anyway. The fact is that, for them, it wasn't possible, in any way, to change any status of Aurovillians, of Auroville etc. So, apart from this, for me it was an exceptional lesson. Because I understood meanwhile the relationship with the community. The relationship with those, who live here and who think in consciousness, of doing something for Auroville, and the possibility, that it doesn't happen, even if you've spent a year of work, right? So, also the acceptance of the possibility, that your effort isn't enough. Then now we know, that things have changed, because we have the Friends of Auroville. We have a lot of possibilities also for others to enter the community much more easily. But for me, it was a really important lesson, because it also helped me understand, how to enter the community, to work in a certain way, and find the possibility to share, what I thought, and, so I understood that it was possible to share what I thought, beyond. So to use my consciousness to try how. I mean, if we talk about relationship with the community, we must also talk about action, that is, your consciousness must become an action. We already said it last time, it must become a conscious action, so that the community can benefit from it.
Giovanni. For me, freedom and responsibility makes me think of another theme that I wanted to launch in the discussion, which is divine anarchy. Because freedom makes me think of the power of the individual to feel free. To do what they want at the moment it comes to mind to do it. Total freedom, so perhaps anarchy, but if it goes without responsibility. It's an unlimited power of the individual, right? So from one point of view, I'm for individual freedom, on the other hand, I realize that if you allow extreme total freedom, maybe you go toward situations of chaos rather than order, or what perhaps we should aspire to. Or what I would like to aspire to, a third way. Because I am somehow averse to both, total freedom and chaos and order, because order seems to me something that constrains me within a rigid scheme. If democracy isn't the ideal, it's certainly among the most advanced forms of government that I know of. Instead there are some who would like to go beyond, but proposing old models, rather than proposing and implementing new models. They go into monarchy or oligarchy, which doesn't seem like progress to me.
Igor, it seems interesting to me that it's actually freedom is responsibility. Because if you want to be free, and you are free to do what you want and to feel, and do what truly guides your soul, or the higher self, call it what you will, you're responsible for what your actions are, and what comes after your actions. But if you're truly guided by your soul, whatever the reaction or what will happen afterward may be, it will always make sense to you, and will always be the right thing, because you were guided by your soul and this therefore returns. Freedom, responsibility for your actions.
Sarah, freedom for me is an essential element in the discovery of the self. Because to discover oneself, one must be free to act, to break patterns, especially internal ones too. But freeing oneself from conditioning requires courage and freedom to explore, maybe a path that until then hasn't been accessible for oneself. So once that spark is lit, to follow it, there's need for freedom. This, I believe many people who have undertaken this adventure, and yes, I personally have made actions, have made decisions that pushed me to break patterns and conditioning that might have held me back in my pilgrimage towards the inner self. So yes, freedom as a necessary internal element to have the courage to undertake the adventure. Then yes, responsibility is a responsibility that comes with the maturity that one has, knowing that we are not alone on this planet and therefore every action has a consequence. But in my opinion, when one is sincere with oneself, it's a bit more difficult to hurt someone, others, or, if one does, one is capable of apologizing. Liliana last time said that they haven't taught us to be free, and this thing she said, I've carried with me until this week, which made me reflect, or not reflect, but it remained there, in the air, that they haven't taught us to be free. Maybe when we were very, very young. Well, it depends also on family circumstances, but yes, at some point, you have to stay within the patterns and march, and then find freedom again. It's an act of courage and of, yes, a push, which is like a grace.
Marco. This was already present with Liliana in the other meeting we had, and we've also already said that clearly, they don't want to teach us freedom, because when a person is free, they think with their own head and don't go looking for someone else to decide for them. And so clearly the relationship is freedom and fear too. They have to teach us to be dependent and not to be free. Otherwise, we would never enter into any type of work that doesn't satisfy us because society needs people who think as little as possible, and do the things they're asked to do, the station master, the office head, the manager, that's what it is. So yes, freedom is an act of will, of seeking it, of not accepting a solution. I know it's difficult, for heaven's sake, we're saying very difficult things, that then don't always happen, and often it doesn't even depend on us. That is when we say that one arrives at Auroville, we don't think of arriving at Auroville by choice. In reality we are chosen. That there's somehow, something that insinuates itself inside, or discovering that these values have always been part of you, and here you can express them, you can expand them and work on them. Well,
Giovanni. Interesting, this concept of freedom as necessity for spiritual progress. In theory I agree, at the same time. This is not a modern, but a very ancient debate. If I am free to do what I want, I can kill my neighbor's dog in the middle of the street or harm others. So there are probably limitations, I would say, almost necessary to freedom. And perhaps it's this concept of responsibility. So if the two are combined, maybe we can achieve something better than just one of the two elements.
Igor, but I think that, if you are really guided by a spiritual part, or really do what your soul dictates, you would never consciously trample someone near you, kill a dog of the neighbor, whatever it may be, precisely because your consciousness is much higher, and has rules that are universal within love, within respect, for what is around you.
Giovanni. These last exchanges help me a bit to move on to another point. The concept of divine anarchy, which we talked about briefly last time, and which I think connects well with what we've said so far. Divine anarchy is a definition given by the Mother, the founder of Auroville, several years ago, which however I think still hasn't found practical realization yet in any part of the world, Auroville included. I launched the new theme and put the microphone back in the center. I'll take the microphone again. The theme we addressed before, freedom and responsibility, we saw it more from an individual perspective. Perhaps divine anarchy could be the evolution of the same concept seen in a group, in a collectivity, because anarchy can be extreme freedom, absence of rules, the very meaning of the word. Responsibility, we've all declined it somewhat the same way. If one is free to act with the guidance of the inner being, which is then the divine in us, we never make mistakes. Who doesn't agree? It seems to me a self-evident statement. It's how to realize it concretely, as a collectivity, to that I don't have an answer. Another definition, here in Auroville, that I often hear, of Sri Aurobindo, the Mother's spiritual companion, is that we are on a path, a philosophy, a road without precise directions. There isn't any yoga. Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, yes of course. But there aren't exercises of asana or breathing or japa or whatever else that leads us to enlightenment. It's not so clear, even though Sri Aurobindo wrote thousands and thousands of pages. Something I hear repeated often is that it's a yoga that leaves you very free. Again, the concept of freedom, divine anarchy, but how to realize divine anarchy. Here, each of us does individual work, this is clear, at least I hope it's clear for all Aurovillians. But how to do it at a collective level? At the moment I don't have an answer, maybe someone else in the group.
Igor, I always return to the same theme, that I think, that I have never heard of divine anarchy, but I imagine that it can always be, if you know and are convinced of your path, like the great figures of life, from Sri Aurobindo, Gandhi, the Buddha, they went simply following, having discovered contact with their inner voice, so they followed it, going against all patterns. And when you truly follow the voice that you know is the right voice, you do something also for the collectivity. Probably, sometimes, maybe without knowing it, or the people around you don't notice it, but if you are truly moved by this divine fire, you don't make mistakes and everyone benefits from it, all the people who are close to you. And then who knows, maybe in a very distant future, they will benefit from the actions that you have done in this moment. As far as I'm concerned, the question is, how do I recognize my gift or my real voice?
Marco, so, for me the concept of divine anarchy is a theme that is totally connected to evolution. And we know that evolution can happen. An evolutionary step can only happen through, as they've explained to us, through a conscious number of people, who create a situation, where action becomes equal for all. But not only that. Divine anarchy allows a group of people, a community etc. to make mistakes, because through divine anarchy, we can allow ourselves to seek what's best for you and the community. To make mistakes when you realize, that the discourse you're having is totally sincere, yet it doesn't allow going beyond the status quo, the existing situation. So this theme is important to allow a community to enter, and that's why the discourse we were having about accepting change is possible, meaning everyone together must agree on what can happen naturally. Like what happens, I don't know, with monkeys? At least, that's what they tell us, who start washing potatoes in the sea and discover they taste better, and coincidentally the same discovery is made on other islands by other monkeys. This is theoretically or practically the evolution that has occurred over millions of years. The possible change to allow you and others to seek new ways that can help you and the community to progress, to change, to eat other things, to use new tools, and so on. This is the possibility that I see through divine anarchy. Then, of course, how to achieve it is much more difficult because it takes a possible number to allow this thing to happen, to allow everyone to be on the same wave of evolution, of change. It's divine because it allows us, precisely through contact with the divine or consciousness, it allows us to be conscious of what is happening, of what we want to do. And all together, conscious of where we want to go, to do new things that are important for us, for others, for the community.
Sarah, divine consciousness is a consciousness where the sense of separation no longer exists. It's just not there. Therefore, you and I are no longer two separate things, but there's something that vibrates and we recognize unity. The mind can formulate this concept, but it's not. It's not realized only with mental awareness, but it's actually a spiritual experience of the cells that reverberates in all of us. Therefore, it's not. It's like dying before dying, where the ego no longer exists to completely merge into consciousness, into divine consciousness. For me, divine anarchy is the pinnacle of what Sri Aurobindo wrote for us. A life that guides us in a way. A chaotic harmony, where there is freedom, and the sense of separation isn't there, that's why it's divine. How to achieve it? It's a very, very mental question. It's the mind that wants to know how, when, why. In the end, it's just entertainment, an illusion that the mind wants to have, to cling to a sense, a direction, a map. We can entertain ourselves, but in the end, it's life itself that guides us into realization.
Giovanni. Beautiful, I agree 100%. Yet there's something we should isn't the right word, but that I would like to do as a collective. Because I'm tired of waiting for something to manifest on its own. Grace, waiting for grace. Yes, grace is one part. I don't remember which of the two sages, Sri Aurobindo or Mother, many others had said the same way. There's this dual component, there's grace, and there's action. Sometimes grace comes to you even if you're a hardened criminal, yet enlightenment comes to you and there's pure grace there. Divine plans unknown to us, to me. Other times, there's an inner process, a process of growth, a will, at least the will must be there I think for me. So, if I don't put myself with the desire to evolve towards the divine, I would probably still be working for Amazon, making a lot of money, becoming super rich, but not happy. Instead here I'm happy, which is not little I must say. But I would like this happiness to be not just individual, but collective, otherwise I wouldn't have come to Auroville, I would have been happy somewhere else. So the purpose of Auroville for me is a collective sadhana. How do we do collective sadhana? It's a question to which I don't have an answer, except in this way that we're doing right now. This is a collective sadhana, we meet, we talk not so much about how much groceries cost at the supermarket, which is also important, which supermarket is most convenient in Auroville, but about the inner being, about how this can involve having a better organizations, a family, a larger group. Here, for example, having more and more meetings like this one today. I come from another meeting, along the same lines as this one, and it's a way. But it involves small groups. Auroville wanted to be this. The difference of Auroville.to and ashram. How big can an ashram be? 1,000 people, 10,000, I don't know. This wanted to be a city, that would be an example to the world, to other cities, a divine city. I don't know, we're talking about important things, it's not about individual growth. There have already been enlightened people, we've heard of Buddha, Sri Aurobindo. If you want to make a list, it's known, it's long, it can even be infinite. But we're talking about the evolution of a city, of 50,000 people, 50,000 evolved beings, 50,000 Buddhas. And I said it the other time. I want to realize it in this life, not in the next incarnation. How do I do it? I don't want to wait, I want to do something and maybe organize more of these groups. It's not my initiative. But, well. I'll stop now.
Sarah, life, which is the most precious thing on this planet Earth, is a precious and dynamic thing. Therefore in life you never stop learning, life will always give us a cue, will always push us to find answers, to look more deeply into what is happening to us. There are so many situations in life in which we see even the most difficult situations sometimes. After years, we see that they were blessings. Therefore trusting in the flow of life, yes, having faith that the lesson we need will come, without doubt, whether it will be easy, difficult, whether we will be alone or have support, the forces come to us and there is no obstacle that is too big, whatever it is. We have the resources within us. So, honor life for the 1,000 lessons it has given us, because it is in life that evolution lies on this planet, in this state of material manifestation.
Giovanni. We can always come back to these two themes, freedom and responsibility, and divine anarchy, but I'm introducing a third topic, a third point for reflection. The importance of listening. It's a theme we talked about a bit last time too, and I just want to briefly add something that I do with my partner, precisely in a small group of two. It's a technique I learned in a seminar last year and that we've adopted. Every day, when we meet we speak for 3 minutes each in turn, with a timer, and the other simply listens. Whoever proposes shall we do the 3 minutes. Starts, and maybe there are some days we don't do it. But almost every day, and it's a way to do a kind of check-in, as they say. How are you, or how was yesterday? Things that maybe you can't express without being interrupted by the other, and so, you allow yourself, you know, that in that space the other has decided. The agreement is you don't speak, but listen. Listening is active listening, the importance is active listening. Because if someone is quiet and thinking about something else, it doesn't count. Active listening is what's important, that is, being there and being present, not distracted by other thoughts. Since you don't have the pressure of having to respond, as in this conversation by the way. We put the microphone in the center and there's no back and forth. Others at this moment are looking at me, and they know that while I have the microphone in hand, they can't do anything but wait, but at the same time, they're there, listening to what I say, with attention, I hope. Sure, if I started saying stupid things they could legitimately think about something else, but even there, one exercise is control. Control is not the right word. Also a form of respect towards the other, whatever the other person expresses, I am there and I listen. So 3 minutes is a technique that I feel like sharing and suggesting.
Sarah, for me listening, we can call it active. Listening is a way of being completely present for the other and for oneself. A presence, it's almost a meditative state, being present and that's it. Without the mind wandering or wanting to interrupt or wanting maybe to interpret or think about something else. For me, active listening is an integral part of yoga, and it's full. There's a sense of fullness, of presence, of being here in the present moment, in the here and now, in the abundance of now.
Giovanni. For me, for Sarah, who was speaking before, I imagine for many of us, this way of living, listening, respecting the other, is part of us, but it's not so common, it's not common at all. When I return to Italy, I see political debates on television or any kind of debate, already the word. They talk over each other, there's no listening at all. So what we take almost for granted, what I sometimes take almost for granted, then I realize, it's just not like that, because we live it daily. But it's a concept that seems not so simple for many. including here in Auroville by the way. There's so much lack of listening. We have a crisis that involves two groups in particular, but many others in between. Many others who find themselves between two fires, and these two groups don't talk to each other. But they don't even listen to each other, because then there are proclamations left and right, but there's no listening, because these proclamations contain partial truths, partial lies. But they don't listen to each other, and you can't have a true collective if you don't listen to each other. So one of the many problems is this. I'll throw in the last theme we have on the list, which is karma yoga. A lot can be written about karma yoga, but anyway, if any of us has something to say, this might be the moment.
Sarah, since all life is yoga, work as service for the divine is an integral part, an integral part. Since nothing is excluded, karma yoga in its essence, in my opinion, is doing the work, whatever work it may be, in full consciousness, in full presence, being present while doing the work, whatever work it may be, in the most perfect way, without neglecting details or in a hasty way. In this way, daily life is also included, life in which the spiritual is not just something you do with crossed legs, secluded, but something that belongs to any area of life.
Marco, karma yoga is the yoga of work, right? The yoga that allows us throughout life to work in consciousness and to do our actions in consciousness, so it's part of all this great work we have ahead of us. It's work only, that is, it's an action not only in work but also in who we have around us, in the family and therefore, then in the community, because it's through the possibility of using the right action at the right time, conscious action when it's needed. It allows us to find solutions that help to change things or to grow situations. Well, in Auroville we have lots of these examples. For example, the entry. No. The guest group. The guest group at one point collapsed in Auroville, due to lack of organization, lack of clarity, I don't know. In Auroville there was an enormous work managed by two individuals, at the beginning, who practically divided our society into slices, and each slice was part of a line of work. And so, with the group I was in, a bunch of artists, we've always tried to create situations where there would be benefit for the community and completely free, naturally. And one of the things we did was precisely to go and take care of the guest service that had collapsed, and therefore to recreate the contacts between people that would allow the guest service to become active again and help guests who come to work to enter within the community, to enter the fabric of Auroville, because it's only through this way of working that one understands more the relationship between people, Aurovillians, work and so on and so forth. One of the actions that came out and that then was, and is still used today, is this guest card that all guests use, to be able to have a clearer relationship with the central fund, the money they can put in use, without there being mistakes in Auroville. Many others, and I can cite Cinema Paradiso, which allows everyone to watch a free movie. Magazine Auroville was another example, where a kind of art magazine allowed whoever to express one's convictions, or to express one's doubts within the community, something that normally didn't happen. It's this that allows us to be present in action, conscious in the action we do, seeking appropriate solutions for that moment, and for that particular situation.
Igor, giving light to small actions that give light to a big action, so small things that help manifest something bigger. So if one puts love and passion into small things, bigger things inevitably form.
Sarah, Sri Aurobindo in his book, The Human Cycle, Ideal of Human Unity in War and Self-Determination, talks about the evolution of human society, right from the beginning until now. He describes almost every detail of it. For me, it was a fantastic book to read and reread. In this book there are various chapters, where he also talks about the French Revolution and ideals for which people fought, should still fight: liberty, equality, and fraternity. Values intensely aspired to, but not yet realized. Sri Aurobindo talks about that work has been done towards realizing equality, but even that, really taking tiny steps. So many struggles for equality of women, races, whites, blacks, Jews, Muslims, in short there are always. And then freedom, also that people fought for freedom, even wars were the result of the fight against totalitarianism. It's something that he noted and that comes to my mind, this sense of fraternity that struggles to manifest itself, this sense of fraternity, precisely in which we support each other and are truly present towards the other, as if they were an integral part of us. Therefore, in my opinion, a good start would be to aspire to these three fundamental values in a society: liberty, equality, and fraternity.
Giovanni. I don't see a better way to end this meeting than with Sarah's words. Unless anyone else wants to add something. Thank you Marco, Sarah and Igor. Thank you Auroville Radio for the recording. Goodbye everyone.
Thank you for listening to this testimonial. If you would like to take part in this project on the inner being, or if you have any questions or comments for our team or participants, please feel free to contact us using the email at the bottom of this webpage.
This is Auroville Radio, voices from the city of dawn.